Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Rise Urban Nation. You know, we got our favorite episode of the month when we get to talk about Black History Month. And we have Shola on for another episode. And I see you are wearing one of my favorite shirts, $49.99. Tell the people where they can get this. Just give them the inspiration behind this shirt, because this is going to be something that we're going to be talking about too as we continue from here on out. So give a brief intro to that.
Okay, I know it's about Black History Month, but this also ties into in a way about how we can improve our Black futures. So $49.99 was inspired by Fela. Actually, he had an awesome song where he had this line where it was like 49 people sitting, 99 standing on a classic public transportation bus from Nigeria. Mm-hmm. So just imagine where the bus only has 49 seats and that's full. And then 99 people are standing on a bus that was not designed to take that many people. So basically, it's just talking about resources and how we as Africans have to share resources that are basically for only 49 people. And majority of us, 99 plus 49, have to share resources for 49 people. And that's very important. So just imagine a loaf of bread being sliced to the point where you don't even feel like you're eating anything. And that's so important. And that also inspired how this is a while ago, before I even had my daughter, so about 15 years ago, how I met some young people who basically actually had a dance crew. So I don't want to go down that road, but I used to have an events company, and all these kids had so much potential beyond being dancers. And one of the things I did was I said, look, you guys have to graduate high school, because from there you can have a stepping stone to do whatever you want. So that became like a mode of action for me to help youths. Like, okay, I will be there, mentor them to a certain point to make sure that they're self-sufficient. I just did it naturally. I didn't realize it was going to be a thing. So $49.99 is about a project for us run to really support 49 able people who are keen on action in our community but don't know how, to mentor at least 99 young people. So that way it's like there's already enough resources plus extra, right? So it's changing the narrative from what it was to something different. So creating a positive spin on it. And that's very important. So myself and Taryell are very big on mentoring and advising and supporting the next gen. So what we're trying to do is create some kind of process around that and pass that on to people in our community who are in that position to be able to go back and help. I mean, think about it. If you help 2 people in your lifetime, that's enough. Think about how that can work for all Black people on this planet. So we just want to start with the first 49, but following, Fela's music, but also someone else that there's another artist that actually sang a song called 49.99, Tiwa Savage. So she started an opening line of her song that way. However, Fela really tapped into it in his own, his own like 7, 8, 10, sometimes 10, 15-minute songs that he has, but he's always talking about the truth about society. And it seems to echo across, Pan-Africa wide, basically. So it's something that we at Run, we're big on action, so we want to make words mean something and use that to change the narrative in our community.
Yeah. And I'm up here thinking about this, since I got the 2 worlds intertwined with me. I have my Black side, and then I have my Nigerian side. And then from my Black American side, there's a lot of people who are not familiar with this story, familiar with, what he means to the community. So I encourage, all those who are listening to my Black American side to get educated on that. And, I was having another thought moment too when you were speaking. I was like, Black Americans in this country have a different kind of resonation with buses, right? Because there was a point in time in this country when Black people weren't allowed to get on buses. They had to walk everywhere and then they had to fight for the right to get on the bus. And then even in getting the fight to get on the bus, they had to have their own separate buses that were not, of the same quality. And then when we had segregation, then they start getting on the bus, but they can only be in the back of the bus. And then they sat anywhere else, they would get arrested. So like there's there's a different relationship to buses for the Black American community versus that our
Mm,
African diaspora when
mm,
it comes to buses. So
mm,
it was just an epiphany as we talk about, as we start to launch into Black history, and how,
mm,
Black history is a different feeling for Africans across the diaspora, right? When it comes to Black Americans in the country, and then Africans as they relate to it. And so, for let me give just the insights, because I remember when me and you first talked about this, and we were talking about the origins of Black history. And I even had to re-educate myself about some of the origins, because I remember somebody asking me, like, why is it in February? Why we get the shortest month? And I was like, that's a good question. Why we only get the shortest month? So the story of Black history, it really begins in Chicago. And then I got this up here, so don't miss my key points. Of 1915, and it was started with Carter G. Woodson, and it was originally Black History Week. And I think from what it looks like, the reason why he chose February for the reasons of traditions and reform. And it was commonly said that Woodson selected February to encompass the birthdays of two great Americans who played a predominant role in shaping Black history, which was named Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, whose birthdays were on the 12th and 14th, respectively. And that's how we started off with whatchamacallit, Black History Week, which then turned into a whole Black History Month.
mm.
Um, Now, you know, going into what we kind of talked about, and what we plan to talk about in this episode, I'm curious, as an African who's lived on what, 3 continents and worked in 5 continents, what does Black history mean to you, and how do you feel it has improved throughout the years?
Okay, so I'm gonna give like a timeline based on where I've lived. So obviously, as you guys know, I was born in the UK, but at least the first 15 years of my life I spent in Nigeria. I never heard of Black History Month. It wasn't a thing because you remember I'm living in a continent where I'm surrounded by people that look like me, who are achieving, who are extremely competitive and getting to the top and having a good life, right? So it wasn't something that had to be highlighted. We just heard about the things in our everyday lives. And it didn't have to be someone major. It would just be someone you knew, someone in your circle, right? Somebody's parent that has achieved XYZ, right? And then you see them flossing, showing off their success and all of that. And it was so encouraged in our upbringing in schools, even in our religious settings, to be the best that we could possibly be. So having to have like some kind of historical record of all the things we had done wasn't absolutely, I would say, necessary. We just lived that every day. I
Mhm.
would say that what we learned from history was really colonial history. We didn't really learn about the major achievements that led to us getting our independence, and all the kind of issues that led to tribes coming together to make sure independence happened, right? And all the
Mhm.
issues that happened based on how the independence basically was carried out, which we still suffer today in parts of Africa. And then living in England, I moved to England when I was 15. Living there,
Mhm.
it I because I was around Nigerians, I lived with Nigerians, I celebrated with Nigerians. My friends who were from Nigeria in the private school I went to, all of them came, to study the next step of their education in the UK. So I didn't experience anything that made me feel any lesser of myself, or that I had to be reminded consistently that I can achieve something. We hung together, we talked about all these things, we supported each other. So
Mhm.
it wasn't something I was taught in school either. It wasn't unless I went looking for it. I mean, I remember when I went to University College London, that's the university I went to. They had School of Oriental and African Studies. It didn't click to me why they had a separate college. You,
Mm.
you understand that? I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I didn't get it. And it's funny because now I had the opportunity to do some courses there. The cool thing about being in UCL, you can essentially do courses in all the different schools, but
Mhm.
I was like, what else am I going to learn about Africa? And honestly, it wasn't until I got to the US that I realized that there's
Mhm.
a lot to learn about Africa. One of the reasons I actually studied economics was to find out why we were so poor, because we had so
Mm.
much resources, we had people, and still yet, everyone, poverty was everywhere. No matter how rich you are, you see it on the road every time you come out of your house. When you go to work, to school, there are elements of poverty just around, elements of wealth. And it was just like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, everyone should have enough
Yeah.
here. And coming
Mm-hmm.
to the US, I learned a lot. Like, this is when I realized that African history is necessary, because it's not just about the history of people, or what people went through here, or through the Caribbeans or Latin America. It's about the fact that there's this lost connection of people understanding what Africans are even achieving now today, or the fact that
Mm-hmm.
a whole continent is run by people that are black. Like, how is it that, that's not transmitted somehow into education?
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, my education in England, I had moments where I was able to connect Africa and what I was studying. Right, when I studied economics at A levels, when I studied economics in uni, there were moments where I could utilize my experience as an African, or what I wanted Africa to become, in my in my writing. When I had to submit a project or something, I always did comparative projects, and I was doing it because I wanted to understand how some of these economies evolved and how I can apply to Africa in the future. This was in hope that I would get a position or something that will allow me to play around with economics, the economics of either my country or the continent as a whole. So I realized why it's important. It's important for those that were taken. It is important for us that lost members of our family, of our tribe, of our village, to understand what has happened here. To understand that despite that difficult, inedible history, that people like us, that we thought were lost, have achieved so much. That it's because of them that someone like me can come here and not be attacked every single day the way they were. They came out on the road, as you said, they couldn't get on the bus, right? And it's funny. Okay, we couldn't get on the bus. Guess what? In Africa, we used to walk everywhere. So you know, it didn't matter. An African can literally, like, I remember my mom telling me that my father and my grandmother, when they were younger, and this is people who were born like in the 30s and the 40s, they used to walk like from their village in one state to another. Imagine trying to walk from California to Arizona. It was just, and this is to get to school. They will be away for 3 to 4 days before going back home. A whole day or two to walk, right? Until they got bicycles. And it's like knowing that even just a generation away from me, there's some stories about a lot of things that were similar here, but it is not similar at all, because that slavery, you can't even compare that to anything. And it's about recognizing forgotten blacks and their achievements. It's also helping me realize that I need to go back home too, and figure out what we achieved as well, properly, like the real history, not what we were fed, what actually happened. This is so sad, because in history, the
Mm-hmm.
victor always rewrites history. So what really
Mm-hmm.
happened is never what's put down on paper. This is why
Yes.
I appreciate, yeah, I appreciate our like having moments with elders. It is so important
Mm-hmm.
that, and it's hard for them. I realize now why they don't tell us all these stories, because it was painful. But elders have a duty to tell us, and I think this is something that happens very, very is a poignant part of the system with Native Americans, because, well, say indigenous, they pass the stories on, so that
Mm-hmm.
no one forgets what happened and how literally over 60% of the population was wiped out, right? Their culture, their
Mm-hmm.
history. I mean, look at Latin America. Languages were wiped out, ways of life were wiped out, and they're literally Spaniards away from Spain. So there's a lot here that we need to unpack when it comes to Black History Month. I feel is should be the highlight and the marker that everyone
Mm-hmm.
else from any other ethnic group uses to celebrate their own history, because it's not about celebrating it, it's about unearthing the truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the difficult, especially the most difficult parts of it. I've had to go through in waves of disgust, pain,
Mm-hmm.
disbelief, sadness, anger, frustration, and that's only in the last how many years? I can't even imagine, and I can never compare my pain to someone who is a descendant of a slave or someone that was taken. I just
Mm-hmm.
can't, because I have not been recycling the same stuff. I wasn't born into this pain. I wasn't
Hmm.
fed consistently that I can achieve. Meanwhile, the ancestors built and pushed America further than anyone today. Even now, I make it a big thing for me during Black History Month is that I make sure I learn about someone new, either one or two
Hmm.
people. I have to, that's something that's so important to me. I make it intentional that, man, okay, oh, this month has come up. Shala, who are you going to learn about? Who is important to you?
Yeah.
What were they trying to achieve? Who is doing it today? Who can you support? Who can you lend your expertise to help them keep pushing? One area that I'm really still confused about is the politics here, because I struggle to understand American politics.
But
But
but but here's the thing: the politics are
mm,
based upon some of the history, right?
mm, mm,
If
mm,
if you look at, a basic analogy of a trauma that happens to a group of people or individual, that trauma is passed down from generation to generation, and the politics then start to feed based on those traumas, those stories that are passed down, and unless we unearth the truth of why those traumas exist, then we tend to repeat
repeat. Yes.
or or stay strong in one course of action of why this isn't true. And I although we're talking about U.S. Black history, I do think there is a deeper root to the story that I'm starting to unlearn too.
Mm,
Is how you know all of the dominant world leaders at that time, how they partook into dividing Africa to what it is today, so that they can control and conquer all its natural resources
mm,
and use it to build to further build the wealth of the institutions, the major institutions like the UK, like the US, like Canada, like all these. It was all built on the back of Africa and some type of corruption throughout slavery, right?
mm, mm,
And even learning about some of I just recently learned that there was a tribe in Africa that participate in catching Africans and giving them to these different continents across the globe and bartering and and just they it was mind blowing to me, and I'm still learning. I'm like, what? Like, what part of the history was this?
mm,
And as we start to unearth these things, we can have a better understanding of, why you know Africa remains rich in its uh, natural resources, but poor in its uh, ability to be you know the
mm.
the economic force it should be. It should be even with the way we put the map. Africa is one of the
Mm,
largest continents, and then
mm.
they we have
A
somehow
little smaller.
purposely accepted the smaller version of it on the map. And although it's been proven, you still see that circulating around, like
I don't think it's been purposely accepted. I just think we just didn't know. Remember, a lot of what we are also learning wasn't essentially created by us, right?
nah.
We are learning what we need to survive in a society that did not take into account our own evolutionary standard, right?
Hmm.
So these are things that, I mean, some of the things that we invented before colonization, before slavery, they were major, and all of a sudden it's been erased. Even if something that's similar was invented on your continent, doesn't mean that you have to discount that someone else did it before you. So that incident that you're talking about, and I want to make sure that this episode is well, that you get so much from it, is the Berlin Conference. In
Hmm.
1884 and 1885, there was a meeting of European colonial powers to divide the territory of Africa among themselves. It was convened by the German Chancellor, Otto von, I can never pronounce it, Bismarck. If well, I'll have to apologize for pronouncing it wrong because I don't like people apologizing my name wrong. I was attended by 14 European countries as well as the United States. Okay,
Hmm.
so imagine someone sitting down with and sharing an entire continent, right? They carved Africa up. So this is something that hurt me a lot when I discovered this, because Nigeria, like, there are 700 and something dialects in Nigeria. However, in the
Hmm.
countries that surround, even though they're French colonized countries, they speak Yoruba.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I never understood. I'm like, how is it possible that Yoruba and Hausa are spoken in other places and, languages are just because that's like how it is with the partition in India and Pakistan. Someone just came and drew a line.
Mm-hmm.
And then they merged, like in Nigeria, we have three dominant tribes: Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa. I mean, how we're even able to get along to this point, which is primarily one of the reasons that Nigeria doesn't move forward properly. I never understood, right? And we're also split by religion as well in that country. So you can imagine, like, how did this happen? Someone did that. And if we really wanted to go back to how Africa was pre-colonial and pre-Berlin Conference, we were tribes, just like there were tribes here, in in the whole of Americas. If you look at the original Africa map, it's mind blowing, right? And you think that 16 people, right, or a party of 16 people sat down and decided to start sharing, like they owned it. Now, one of the key things is to understand the unfair benefit from Africa. And I think Africans need to understand this too. I think we are now, because the more of us that, are more worldly, traveled, study, we still have this desire to go back to do something. I did that when the minute I finished, graduated from university. I went back home because I wanted to see what I could do, but I wasn't ready for the difficulty that I was about to experience. But the thing is, there are numbers of ways at which the world continues to benefit from Africa in ways that are considered to be unfair. And I'm just going to give you a
Mm-hmm.
few examples. Economic exploitation. Even if we
Mm-hmm.
just leave it here, natural resources from Africa, oil, minerals, precious metals, are at the lowest possible price. Imagine you selling something, like you're an artist and you sell your art, you want to be paid $1,000 for it, and then
Mm-hmm.
you want to be paid $1,000, but someone tells you they're going to pay you 10 pesos. So first of all, it's not being paid. You're not getting paid the money you want. It's being paid in a different currency that's not yours, and there's no value. That
Mm-hmm.
person is going to take what they bought for 10 pesos, yeah, and they're going to resell it for like $1 million. That's like what it feels like for me as an
Mm-hmm.
economist, understanding economic exploitation of Africa. Simple one is cobalt. Right now, Africans are now realizing that that is very valuable for the future, especially with electric vehicles. So
Mm-hmm.
they are encouraging people to stop taking the cobalt and going out. You should come and mine it and refine it in the country you're getting it from. That is one of the
Mm-hmm.
wisest things that our leaders could ever do. Some of our
Mm-hmm.
leaders. Then the next thing is imbalanced trade. African countries have to compete with European countries that have more advanced economies and greater market access. The easiest example is the COVID vaccine. Can you imagine what every third world country went through to get the vaccine?
Mm-hmm.
Why wasn't that formula shared? Because most countries have the ability to actually make vaccines. In fact, I think a lot of vaccines were actually made in India, I believe, and then shipped. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
don't know this. Why wasn't that shared? And this is a big thing about innovation. A lot of Africans innovate stuff, but in order
Yeah.
to escape poverty, they will sell that off quickly, earlier than they should, without thinking about the consequences, something that they probably designed to help their own community. And this is something that we need to think about. So we are literally in a trade deficit all the time with Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Then now debt. African countries, they often have to take out loans from European countries and international organizations to fund development projects.
Mm-hmm.
These loans come with high interest rates, which can make it difficult
Mm-hmm.
for African countries to pay them back. And most times we now get to a situation where we have to ask for erase, like for them to erase our debt at another cost. So it feels like we're always in debt to
Yeah.
someone, right? And
Yeah.
even to the point where you give out the natural resources for free. I could go on and on. There's political interference. There's still colonial legacy. Colonial legacy is really where we should talk when it comes to history. This, like for Black
Mm-hmm.
History Month, I feel like Africans should focus on that. The legacy of European colonialism in Africa continues to shape the continent still today. Yeah. For example, the borders of, again, as I was saying, the borders of many of those African countries were drawn by colonizers, which can create ethnic and linguistic divisions that continue to fuel conflict
Mm-hmm.
today. So
Mm-hmm.
I think when it comes to Black history, experiencing, feeling, learning what I know now, because this is another issue. A lot of Africans have no clue about slavery. In fact,
Yeah.
I find it very hard to read, to watch, and these are only reflecting a fraction of what really happened, right?
You
I
know
can't
what's
handle
funny?
it.
I think yeah, you can't handle it. And then even when I do have these conversations
Mm.
with other Africans, they have a hard time grasping the concept of slavery. Yeah, they like, what do you mean? Like you are going to enslave
A
my
person.
body, my family, like that will never happen, right? No, it actually happened. No, that will
Exactly.
never happen. Like
So
they can't grasp the
no,
concept.
it is very hard. And it's like, okay, I now understand systemic racism because see, accepting, it's like when you're in love with someone and you have to accept the shitty parts of that person, excuse my French, right? All of
Hmm.
it. And be realistic and accept. When you accept, you're thinking, can I continue to handle this? Right? This is, and I'm only using a romanticized way of even describing it. It's not the same, or so please don't come at me. But the thing is, it's so hard to accept that another human being could do that to another human being, right? And then you're still living with your rapist.
Yeah.
That is what it
But
feels
keep in
like.
mind, you know,
Yeah.
they it we were deemed as not human beings. It was like
Mm.
uh
Fraction.
we were property.
Yeah.
We were capital, and that's
Mhm.
why the journey of wealth, especially for Black Americans, is so important to us. As Dr. Angela say, we were capital before there was capital, right? And
Yeah, that's in our
we
book.
are the wealth. We are the wealth builders and the wealth creators, right?
Yeah. Can I
Because
read
it
that quote
we
to
were
you, bro?
literally the
Yeah.
capital that was used to build this country.
Yeah. And I'm going to read that quote to you, and you can find it on page 1 in our journal that just came out. So, Dr. Pamela Jolly said, "We as African Americans are the only people in America who were first capital before we made capital. And when we look at business, it can't help but be personal. And that we came over here on a balance sheet, and that we are wealth, and we've been creators of wealth from the moment we got here. And the goal for us needs to become wealth creators for ourselves." And
Right.
we put that there because when I remember seeing that, my own experiences, it helped me even make the statement that we are assets. Assets,
Hmm.
not as the balance sheet assets, no, to ourselves personally and to our community, whoever may live in it, right? And to the
Hmm.
world. And it's funny because if we acted the same way as colonizers did, as slave owners did, I don't think this world would be livable. We are
Hmm.
expected to be quiet. We are
Hmm.
expected to forgive without even hearing sorry. And that's something I
Mm.
have had to work on as an African. I'm glad you asked me as an African because even the tribe I come from, I learned the history of my tribe, and that made me feel really good because I'm like, I really hope my tribe didn't participate in this thing. And the kind of family I come from in my tribe, it was very important for me to see. But I was able to find one of my ancestors that fought predominantly with tribes from Dahomey, right? When they were coming to steal people, they literally were fighting slave traders on their own borders. So I'm Yewa, and our tribe borders Benin.
Mhm.
So it was very important for me that is like a lot of us Africans don't even appreciate, except for Igbos, so they are different. Where we come from, all of us that grew up in
Mhm.
Lagos, we don't go and find out where we come from in terms of our
Mhm.
villages, like our parents' real ethnic origin, right? Like, and stuff. And this is very sad because if we do that, we can also join in this is a collective effort.
Mhm.
For me, my participation, my ancestors' participation or non-participation, I feel a responsibility for, which is one of the
Mhm.
reasons why Taryell and I built Run. It was that collective understanding of how we wanted to elevate our community because I didn't know how. I didn't understand why I received a lot of animosity from my African American brothers and sisters sometimes, or we couldn't understand each other. I struggled, but Black History Month was so important to me to understand that. I'm also making it important to my daughter to understand that.
Mhm.
So that if she ever encounters anyone who just, I mean, I remember in England, I used to have I used to, and I'm really sorry because I have a lot of Jamaican and Caribbean friends. I used to feel I didn't understand why they were very like upset, angry, aggressive, and I said to myself, "What's wrong with these people?" I didn't get it. It's becoming
Hmm.
here that I was able to understand.
Yeah.
But what I
Now.
want is my daughter to have compassion and empathy and understanding. So I remember she asked me something one day because something happened to her, and I said, "Look, Alex, don't feel don't feel bad. Try to understand what that person has experienced compared to
Hmm.
you, right? Try to see it from their point of view." Fortunately, my daughter is homeschooled, so she the history she learns is accurate and appropriate. So and I have to say it that way because we're still having issues with the whole state saying they
Right.
can't teach certain things, and it's I want to connect. I need to find a
Right.
way, but I need to understand the pain. If I don't understand the pain, I cannot understand how to help. Because for
Right.
me, I was never told I couldn't do anything. That is not even in my dictionary. For someone to
Right.
not only be told, but to be destroyed when they do achieve and do it better, that's scary. It's hard to move forward to help rebuild mindsets, right? That's very difficult. But today, I think accountability is becoming a major part of living in this world.
Hmm.
The next generation is not taking any BS from anyone. They're holding their leaders, the community accountable, right? And it starts with
Yeah.
understanding history. So for me, I am an advocate for Black History Month. I'm an advocate for making it bigger, more amplified
Hmm.
across the diaspora, right? So for Africans to use that month as an opportunity to really harp on how colonization literally has wrecked our continent. Also, how colonization
Hmm.
also masked the level of damage that slave trade did, and then the wiping out
Mm.
of people. I mean, the Congolese are, I mean, how, like, they went through a lot, right?
Yeah, they did.
And in some of the things they went through on African soil, or even still today, South Africans, right? This is something that,
Right.
you and I have had personal conversations about, like, man, like, if you understand the economy in South Africa, you'll be shocked where 80% of the economy only have 20% own 20% wealth, and then
Yeah.
20% own 80% wealth. That is not, no matter how the leaders look like us, there's still a lot of disparity there, right? So I understand them fighting for their resources even when other Africans come to that country to better themselves. So there's a lot
Yeah.
I as an African see. I can't change in my lifetime. I don't think so. I don't know if it will. I think a
Yeah, but we
century
could
would.
we could have a start of
Oh,
where
we can have a
we
start. Oh yeah,
start
it's
to
already
implement,
started.
right?
It's, it's already, yeah.
Like, yeah, I always know it's tough to be the sole starter of
Mm,
making the full shift and change, but we're just using Run as our platform to get the foundation, the conversation started. Now I want to go back to, because I know you have this holistic view as you as a person as going through what this means to you, but I understand how you know um, amazing it is that you've lived and experienced these three continents. And so I want to try to dissect it a little bit by asking you, to take on a hat from each of your views, compartmentalize yourself in the three continents that you've lived in. You now as an African American, you as a European, and you as a Nigerian, or like, what does it mean to you in these three different arenas to really celebrate you know Black History Month? Like, is I know you beautifully tied it into one bow of you as holistically, but like, is it different for each of these? you know uh if you take on these different hats and you resonate in as a person who's from that continent and from that
mm.
culture and group, like, does it resonate differently between the three?
It resonates differently because African Americans are showing us across the diaspora how to retrace our history. Um, the pain is the same when
Hmm.
you're no longer ignorant,
Hmm.
but the experience will never be the same. I
Mm.
am this is probably the first time I'll say this out publicly, because I say it like to my friends. I felt like the first half of my life, I didn't take advantage of what it meant to be African. I didn't respect it or celebrate it enough. I don't even think I did so because I was able to live in Europe fairly easily without any kind of racial tension, right? And I keep telling people that I think maybe I lived in a bubble, because nowadays I'm seeing a lot of systemic racism and things that have happened to a lot of other people's other than myself, that I'm like, is this the same England I know? That what was I doing? And it helps me understand when someone says they didn't experience racism. But here it's not, it's every day. When I cross the street, when someone, if the person doesn't look like me on at a stop sign, guess what? They're not going to wait for me to cross the street. This happens 70% of the time. I have to check and wait until that person waves me, especially if the person looks different, the skin tone is different from me. I wait. I'm not crossing the street, because most like the same thing happens in the supermarket, right? You know where you're supposed to wait for people to cross. Once they see what I look like, guess what? They speed past. This happens. I see this a lot. I'm sorry, but this happens a lot with the baby boomers.
Mm.
When my daughter comes home and tells me something that happened, that before I lived here, I would have said, "Oh, that person is mean. That person is mean." I didn't believe it was a collective behavior that has been allowed. Also, working close to you in DEI and realizing that I have you people who have been emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually raped have to be on a round table with the person that oppressed them and exercise those atrocities, begging them to include them. And this is not just for Black people. This is everyone, every melanated person, or you're a melanated person, also our Asian brothers and sisters. Then knowing that for some reason we are seen as lesser wherever we go. I never thought about it. Now, every lived experience I have to evaluate that, oh, why did they do that? For instance, let me give you one that's very funny. In the UK, Nigerians are well known for carrying load when they travel. Like, you tell us 50 kg, we're packing 70. We're happy to pay the excess luggage. We would even carry like 5 massive suitcases that look like houses. So we have a separate, I don't know if it's the same now, but we used to have a separate section in Heathrow Terminal 4 that was designed with, those scales they used to weigh like animals. That's the kind of scales and before you get to the line, you have to weigh first. Any excess, they have this, Lord, I almost said this term for these bags, but there's these bags that they have ready for free, ready for you to move the excess into it. So that area is designed to take, for us, right? I didn't understand that, so me, I always packed light. I never I also it's always funny how the British Airways or Virgin Atlantic to give team will always see that, they'll call you quickly to the front of the line. Yeah, she doesn't have any load, But when I think about it, I'm like, come on, man. And a lot of these airlines, that trip, Nigeria to wherever, is their lifeline. It is one of the most expensive tickets you can buy. Like, I remember looking at a ticket from England to Ghana one time, and the ticket to my own country was like 3 times the price. Like, man, I rather fly to Ghana. And it got to the point I would fly to Ghana and take a flight with a local, like a continental airline, and just fly to Lagos. It was so much cheaper, and a lot of these things start to click. Like, sometimes you say why in the moment, but you don't try to understand because it's just too much. Sometimes, you would just be angry all the time, right? But I think I'm able to pause because I've experienced better. I've been around my own people consistently for 15 years, the first 15 years of my life. So that has shaped how I even deal with someone that is either racist or a system that is racist. And I think that's something that Black History Month is going to help with. It will help you remember who you are. It will help you remember where you're from. It would encourage you to decide and to discover the truth. It will encourage you, and this is every single Pan-African, it would encourage you to realize the grace
Mm-hmm.
of the kind of people you are from, of how forgiving we are as
Mm-hmm.
people. I mean, I just watched, and I'm not going to give any spoilers because I don't know if you watch it, Wakanda Forever.
Yeah, please don't spoil it.
I won't spoil it, but there was a difference with the same resource in how one ethnic group protected it versus Africans.
Mm-hmm.
We are that way. I think some people don't believe. See, I think some groups have a vengeful nature.
Yeah.
They can't understand why a black person isn't vengeful
Yeah.
because of all the stuff they know that has happened to us. It's like they're waiting for us to retaliate. And I'm going to tell you this right now. We don't have time for that. We want to.
Yeah, I don't think. I've heard white people say this too.
Yeah.
Like, and we're honest about it. I think this is why we try to keep certain groups oppressed, because we're so scared that what we did to them, they might do to us. And I don't think that's the truth for us. I think we're very
It is
loving
not.
people.
We
We're
want to
forgiving
enjoy
people.
life. Look at our culture.
Yeah.
It's about even death. We celebrate
Yeah.
person dying. Have you seen? I mean, that's like I like with these funerals in this country. It always really depress me. I'm like, this
Yeah.
person. I'm not even celebrating this person's life. Like we're not going to eat sandwiches and go, and
Yeah.
salad. Like it's like you. It's everything.
Yeah.
There was a song I heard from. I think it's from Congo. And it's called. I think the name of the singer is or the name of the song is Ambassador, or the name of the singer is Ambassador. Oh man, I'm doing this such a disservice, but I promise I'll put the name of this song. But there's something
We'll put it in the show notes when she finds it. Don't worry.
He says Tulemon say Africa say. I'm not saying it properly, and I can speak French. I mean, I'm doing a bad job.
No worries. We'll put it in.
Put it in the notes. Yeah, it's a beautiful man. The song will make you just jive. But basically, he's saying everybody in the world is saying Africa does things in excess. Africans do things in excess. Come on, man. Why not? When the suffering that we're suffering, the only way we can forget about the suffering is to enjoy life despite the atrocities, the poverty, the everything. I mean, my mom was telling me the other day that, she misses. She used to have a party to go to every weekend. You know the way Nigerians have weddings, birthdays, and all that lot. From Thursdays, party, you can't get anyone to work, really. So I'm like, man, yeah, that's true, Here, that's counting bills. That's at the end of the month, it's just bills, at the end of the week, it's like, okay, who do I owe money to now? But it's like, despite the difference in the lifestyle and all that, the quality of life there is better, because despite all the crap we go through, we find a way to celebrate. And I think that's what BHM needs to become, Black History Month. Like, let's remember and let's celebrate, right? That we are still here, we are still thriving, right? And that this will not continue forever because we are now awake. And that is something that's so important. So whatever you want to say, woke culture, whatever, it is you trying to diminish us, holding you accountable, holding your ancestors accountable, right? And it's a situation where we're asking for allies to see look what happened. Why communities can't rise, right? And what are you doing? You personally, who wants to be an ally, what are you doing to unravel and uncover and dismantle these systems? You that have an EV car, right? What do you sit down to think about how that is being made, where the resources come from? You're able to pay, in some cases, 100 grand for the car. Meanwhile, what is powering it? Someone probably got less than $1 for mining that, right? And if you're crying now about global, the climate situation, guess who is suffering more? People who don't have the infrastructure that even you with infrastructure in the first world can't handle. What happens if the world has to turn to Africa to become its farm? Are we going to go through what happened in the past? Or if we don't learn our history, it could repeat and nobody will say anything. And that's something that I champion my American brothers and sisters, because sometimes when I see how they deal with things, I understand why. A typical African would just look away or just brush it off. But African Americans have gone through so much that they've earned the right to speak up. They've earned the right to challenge. They've earned the right to be beneficiaries. Reparations shouldn't be an argument or discussion. You stole labor, you stole people. That's an economic detriment as well for the continent.
Yeah.
You brought them here, they made you richer, you brought them through a horrible, odious journey. Half of them probably didn't survive. And still standing, and a good portion are doing well. But they do so silently. They have to because of fear of what happened in Tulsa, which
Hmm.
is not just Tulsa that happened in multiple communities. A community is doing
Yeah.
well or growing. Guess what? A railroad or a road or something gets built in the middle of it, or it just
Yeah.
gets stolen or taken. Something happens between the laws in the city or county or whatever, it disappears. There are little
Yeah.
things that we need to understand why it's happening. What is the fear? But our history would understand our history not just as black people, but for the whole world would realize that you can't treat us as subpar.
Yeah. And
We deserve
I
a
think that's going to
of
be
wealth
the
and
best thing
prosperity.
that we. Oh, my bad.
Oh, no. I just wanted to drop that because my whole body is hot, kind of thing. So I just this is a very emotional topic.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are going to resonate with the emotion. Um, so we got 5 minutes to wrap up this last one, and so I'm
Hmm.
going to ask you the questions about um the UCSD innovation.
Oh
So
yes.
keep that in mind. Tony, just delete out that clip where I told her that keep that in mind in 5 minutes, and then we'll start from here. All right. So now, Shola, I love that you mentioned all of that, and we hope that we could bring more people to that. But also, along with, understanding the history, I think the beautiful about us and our people is that we are inventors, and we could
Mm,
reinvent ourselves, and we had so many great Black inventors, and their inventions have help improve the lives, and I don't think they should be celebrated if they're not already celebrated. And you recently discovered this Black inventors and their inventions list that I think, who was it put it out by? Was it UCSD?
yes.
And
So you
let's
see the
let's
library.
celebrate some of the
Yes.
because some of these Black inventors, you know, weren't always highlighted in history, and
Hmm.
sometimes their ideas may have been stolen and their history rewritten by whoever stolen or bought or adopted the idea. So give us share with us this wonderful list that you found, and your thoughts around it.
Okay, so I'm gonna be on this list, guys, because I just got the mantle of inventor officially this year.
Woo!
So, two patents we're working on over the last couple of years, and one has been granted, went live on the 31st of January. So we're really, really excited about that as a team. But I'm
Congrats,
excited to have that mantle.
congrats.
And because of that, I want to let people know that look like me, that look, man, you can do this, right? Any thought you have, get a patent. Now, I'm going to start, Taryll, from this list with the first five. And of course, I'm biased, right? And then
Hmm.
you and I can go back to back, head to head, and pick the ones that are like very interesting across this list. And this list
Hmm.
will definitely share the link with you guys on our Black History in the Making page, which has some exciting news as well on our publication front. So on this list, Black inventors and their inventions, found this on UCSD, that's University of California, San Diego, and it's from the Black Inventions Museum, a nonprofit organization. I guess they're putting together all these things. And what is notable are the first five inventions. So they are paper, chess, alphabet, medicine, and civilization. Civilization is
Mm.
very important to me because one of the key things that were used when it came to colonization and the mass genocide that happened in a lot of these continents was that word that we were not civilized. it is very
Mm-hmm.
interesting that this is associated with Africans. And I would not credit this to Africans alone. When you look at like the Mayans, Aztecs, what they had built,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and Persia and all these places, what they had built as well, although they too had some issues with slavery. But, you know, it's very, I find it
Mm-hmm.
very, like, it's very like relief that someone has acknowledged what how our society looked, right? So it's those, imagine those five, when you use a piece of paper, when you play chess, when you look at the alphabet, yeah, medicine that you put in your
Mm-hmm.
mouth, and civilization, you think about Africa first. Okay. So that's
Mm-hmm.
something that I really got excited about. So I'm gonna throw it to you, T. I don't know which invention here really caught you, or who caught your mind or blew your mind here.
Yeah, I'm over here looking at it. You got let's see. I think civilization, medicine by Africans. The alphabet was done by Africans too. That was that stood out to me. And then I'm looking at things like, oh, my computer screen just went out.
Oh yes.
uh,
Pull it up
uh,
again.
all right, so player, the piano player Joseph Dickinson. I was like, wow, I didn't know we he was piano playing was invented by this person. Arm for the recorder player Joseph Dickinson. The door stop and doorknob was built by a black person, Dorsey. So like, congratulations, because everybody has to a doorknob somewhere in their house or their office building. Think where you would have been
Without
if
it.
you without it. Like no
There'll be
doors
saloon
will be
doors
able
now.
to
Think about the
properly.
saloon door. Remember in old Alamo, like
Yeah, but
cowboy country.
you can't close that.
Oh, you
You know how many people had to go through that salon door and get either smacked on the back side or the front side if you don't get through quickly enough, right? You're welcome. We made it better for you, and you can have privacy now.
can't. Okay, I'm gonna go next. Yeah, the next one I'm really impressed by is George Washington Carver. Right, guys,
Like,
Americans and peanut butter.
peanut butter jelly time.
Yes,
Peanut.
like come on, man. Like honestly, I cannot understand like the fact that we're in Europe, I'll just be seeing different kind of jellies, like well, you call it jelly here, but
Like,
jams and compotes and
like.
curds. It's literally peanut butter city, right? And to think that a lad called George Washington Carver did this, and he had like two other
like,
major inventions: paints and stains, lotion, and soap.
like.
So not being ashy. When you see black people, we always have a skin like that's standard. That's how we've always been. We need to
Ooh,
nourish our melanin.
look, I just saw one that really caught my eye. The
Ooh, which
toilet.
one? Which one?
Like imagine like toilets were been by
Mm,
imagine where we would be without a toilet.
bro,
Like,
I actually
woo, you still
did
be going
something on this hygiene. This hygiene journey has been long. During my A levels, I did a project on hygiene, and toilets was one of them. Oh, bro, if you know what it
wow,
was like before toilets, oh man,
man.
you will be like,
So I mean this
these
list
people
is
still on this planet.
look,
That's
maybe we'll
major.
put this as a link to an episode as well. If
Yeah.
you guys haven't checked out this list is amazing, and maybe we'll try to
Mhm.
recreate some social media posts to share with folks about it. But
Yes,
this list is long.
it
Um,
is.
I'm
Air
glad we were able to
conditioning,
wrap up
bro.
with
Air conditioning. Did you see the air
there.
conditioning? Frederick
I
M.
saw that.
Jones. He had a lot of inventions.
Like, so I'm just glad we were able to wrap up with all of this Black and African joy at the end of what
Mm.
we've invented. We're gonna do a couple more episodes. I don't think one is enough because we could talk about this forever. So we'll probably have to come to you guys with maybe two or more episodes around Black History Month that we continue this conversation. Shola, as always, I appreciate you having this conversation with me,
Oh,
and I hope people
likewise.
love it. And we'll catch you all on the next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye.